Welcome back, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, to the newest episode of Dick Rogers' Space Detective. This week, we're back to the standard format of the show. Well, mostly.
Definitely. Except for the fact that this episode is bonkers off the wall to the moon and back!
There is that, yes. But before we get into talking about today's script, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the whole project. What makes Dick Rogers such a fascinating and compelling subject for research?
Ooh, I'm always down for a little philosophical discussion.
Guys.
In all my years searching through the ephemera and vintage media, I never thought I'd come across something like this show.
Sure, everyone who buys old reel-to-reel tapes hopes they'll stumble across a song demo from a famous band, or a band that could have been famous if they just stuck together long enough.
Or interesting vintage radio ads.
Or recordings people used to make to mail to relatives back when long-distance phone calls were a much more expensive proposition.
Yeah, that always warms my heart to hear those.
Guys!
Interesting old radio programs or recorded speeches.
But the reality is, most of those tapes are either blank or have something recorded on them that really isn't even interesting to listen to once.
Oh, the best I ever found was a tape with a couple of sessions of a local city council meeting on it. And there wasn't even any public input. They just ended up discussing progress in old business and adjourning after confirming the next meeting.
Guys!
I once found a tape where someone was planning on recording ideas for songs, but they never made it past the first verse of the first song.
Pornstar!
Ah! Please do not shout that word. All right. I guess we've got to get into it.
Were you two torturing me on purpose?
No!
I didn't mean to. I just got carried away with the conversation.
What's the deal?
Okay, Eleanor, go ahead. But can you please try not to focus on the P word?
Okay. You know what? I'm going to do this your way.
Go on.
This month's episode is very special. Very special. It was originally broadcast in 1951, which is just wild, for reasons you'll soon be all too aware of. Dick Rogers and the Pornstars Guide to the Galaxy was step one in an experiment. And yes, I did just say pornstar.
Yeah. We're not sure if they were angling for a spin-off or if the writer of this episode was just looking to change things up.
Xavier Zappa, the author, not only referenced porn back when it was considerably more taboo than it is today, but also sets up a story arc that could have conceivably been the end of Dick Rogers entirely.
Honestly, just mentioning pornography on the radio could have gotten the plug pulled entirely. I also did some research, and this script just might be the first time that the words pornstar and merch are used ever.
Seriously? That's wild.
It would never have flown on a station that had national syndication. And frankly, I'm still not comfortable referencing it on the podcast today.
Well, it's in there, so you'll just have to deal with it.
Part of me wants to say that's what she said.
Nice. Anyway, the ending of this episode set up a radical script that we'll cover next month.
But that's next month.
So I guess instead of spoiling the surprise, we'll just get into the actual episode now.
And preview the next episode after.
Well, go ahead and intro the episode.
I don't want to.
And so, on behalf of all the other nerds and myself, I hope you'll enjoy Dick Rogers and the Pornstars Guide to the Galaxy.
Welcome back, space fans, to the latest adventures of Dick Rogers, Space Detective. This week, Dick suffers the specter of past love as he is hired to locate his own dastardly doppelganger, all while the threat of a pernicious pirate captain looms. Can Dick solve the case without losing his last shred of dignity? Find out in Dick Rogers and the Pornstars Guide to the Galaxy. Brought to you by Zithrax Industries. Now, we'll hear more about our wonderful sponsor later in the program, but for now, we join Dick Rogers at the beginning of what will turn out to be a very eventful day.
My alarm blazed for the 5th or 6th, 7th time. I grumble as I finally gave up, smacking it off my nightstand, letting it clatter to the floor. If it was broken, I didn't care. My watch said 4 p.m., but a smart man once said that time is relative, and to me, it's irrelevant. It didn't take my head long to remember the night before swinging back at me in revenge as the veins of my skull lit up in flame. I stumbled out of bed and found the discarded bottle from the night before, lapping up the sweet remains like a dying man in an endless desert. The hair of the dog. Once the medicine made the pain go away, I opened up the window to the blinding light of the outside world. My sight was filled with neon lights, only broken by the sight of cars flying past my window. Day in, day out, it always looks the same. Some might find that depressing. I found it comforting. I had had enough change in my life.
Find yourself running on empty and in desperate need of a refill? Then head to your local Space-O-Mart and pick up a case of Zithrak's Finest, the galaxy's favorite Zenghlorpian ale. Zithrak's Finest, guaranteed to get you where you need to go all day, every day.
Damn targeted ads. I closed the ad that had shown up on my watch. Grumble as I might, it was right. I found clothes that seemed the least dirty and forced myself out of my apartment and followed the grav tubes to the Space-O-Mart. Despite it being the year 3304 by Earth standards, the Space-O-Mart still managed to make itself so painfully retro, like I'd walked back into a place lost 1,000 years ago. If it weren't for the odd Xeno or art among the aisles, I'd almost think I was back home. In an instant, I found myself somewhere all too familiar. The liquor aisle, surrounded by all my best friends. Jack, Jim, Zagultar. I found myself reaching for that Zenghlorpian ale. Guess the ads were working. On my way to the counter, I passed the magazine rack and paused. Among the dolled-up faces and surgery-induced figures, I saw myself staring back at me. Me? But not me. My face, even my name. Not Dick Rogers, space detective, but Dick Rogers, Pornstar. Like looking into an alternate universe, except this one was right here in mine. A real-life doppelganger. Same face, same name, another me. And he was a constant reminder of my failures, a reminder of a better life where I made different choices, where I didn't screw up everything with Janet or Edna. Hell, I'd even take Felicity's company at this point. Guess what they say is true about being your own worst enemy. I snapped myself out of my stupor and tore my gaze away from my own face. I dumped the spoils of my venture onto the counter and faced the familiar art of the register. A name tag stuck to its chassis read E.D.
Dick Rogers, it has been a total of 21 days since you have last been here.
I almost scowled as the art recognized me, as if somehow a machine was going to forget. Not exactly here for small talk, E.D.
No, I imagine not, but your appearance has drastically changed since your last visit. Your skin, pale. There are bags under your eyes. You do not look well. How have you been sleeping?
None of your damn business. You gonna recommend me to a therapist? Because if not, I don't have time for this.
No.
The art bagged my sweet ambrosia with its clumsy metal manipulator arms. The price popped up before me. I grimaced and paid for it, swiping my card and draining the last of my cash. I took my prize and left, off somewhere where no one was going to find me. My office. When I arrived, I couldn't help but notice that the door was left ajar. I ignored the digital message board on my door full of messages of past due rent and foreclosure threats. My hand instinctively went to my hip, but it found nothing. I haven't carried my blaster in... How long has it been now? I pushed the thought aside and braced myself, throwing the door open to find a familiar face waiting for me.
Jesus, Dick! Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for you to show up?
Janet, my ex-wife, looked at me as I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me. I could barely remember the last time I saw her, but I'd never seen her like this. I could tell she had some work done, just about everywhere, but I'd never forget the light behind those eyes. You could have called.
I did! I've been trying to get a hold of you for 2 weeks. I don't know how you're supposed to be running a business here if nobody can contact you.
You make it sound like I'm actually trying to run a business.
I see you're off the space wagon again. You look like hell. Have you been taking care of yourself?
I don't care. I walked past her to sit behind my desk, leaning back as I propped my feet up and opened the first of what the dregs of my cash had bought.
Look, I'll cut to the chase. My husband's missing.
Get out.
Really?
Yes, get out.
Hear me out, please. I'm at the end of my rope here.
Why even bother coming to me? Why not Imperial enforcers? Hell, other PIs.
I did. I tried. Believe me, you were my last choice. Because I know how cruel it is for me to show up here. But they know who he is, who he was. They think he's off on another bender. He'll show up eventually. Not to mention, you and he had a pretty public confrontation.
The man threatens the entire galaxy, kidnaps you, and almost sets off a supernova in the center of the universe. Yeah, that's pretty public. And then you went and married the mook.
Don't start with that. You know why I left. And I don't owe you an explanation, but he's the you I could never have.
I mean, if you wanted me to try and blow up the galaxy, you could have just said so.
That's not what I meant, and you know it. He's made mistakes, sure. But I know him like no one else does. Now, are you going to help me or not?
It won't be cheap.
Name your price.
20,000.
Done.
Half up front.
Done. But on one condition.
Before I could ask, she reached over and swiped the bottle from my hand, taking a long swig before tossing the bottle into my garbage disposal. What the?
Absolutely no drinking on the job.
I should have asked for more.
Do we have a deal?
Fine. Deal.
Good. Also, take a shower. You reek.
She was right. I couldn't remember the last time I had a proper wash. I made it quick, cold. With business taken care of, we made our way to my doppelganger's last known location, his place of business. There were certain expectations that came to mind when we made our way to the studio, but as Janet parked her space car and led the way into the building, I found it to be surprisingly clean. Janet knew her way around, so I let her take the lead, but we were barely inside the door before the secretary stopped us.
Hey, Dick, where have you been? Everybody's been looking all over for you. And what are you doing in costume? And no offense, but did you gain weight?
It seemed Janet found this exchange more than amusing, considering she never bothered to stop them. I'm the other one. The detective.
You know the shoot's over. You can drop the method acting, right?
He's serious. This is the other one. He's been hired to find my husband.
Oh.
While we're here, I suppose I can ask you the last time you saw the man in question.
Definitely the after party.
After party?
Yeah, after we wrapped shooting like 2 weeks back. You know, the one about you and...
About me?
Don't even start. You're a public figure, and our work is protected under parody. I checked. Believe me, it's a much more flattering image of you than anything else you've done recently.
Anyway, what about this after party? Did anyone else see him? Was he acting strangely? Did he interact with anyone he usually wouldn't?
Yeah, like the whole studio was there. Dick was, well, for lack of a better word, completely smashed, but that's not unusual for him at a party. He's kind of an animal in that way, you know.
No, I don't.
But either way, last time I saw, he was leaving with you.
Wait, who?
You?
Me?
No, you.
I am not in the mood for a rendition of Who's on First.
One of our other actors. Their name is you. At least that's their performing name.
And does this missing person usually hang out with his coworkers?
Oh, yeah, Dick kind of gets around. But it's pretty common to see him being friendly with the staff or the other actors, even outside of work.
And what about this you? Has she been missing as well?
They.
What?
You prefers they.
Point, please.
No. They showed up the next day. Hungover, but otherwise fine. They haven't been booked for another shoot yet, but that's not unusual either. Our actors usually get a few weeks between major shoots. They're probably at home right now, but I'm not really at liberty to give out our actors' home addresses.
That's fine. I can take him there. Thank you.
And you knew where they live how?
I'm the general talent manager here. Not just for my husband. Now shut up and get in the space car.
Not feeling your most fabulous lately? Zithrax's range of species-inclusive cosmetics can help you both look and feel your best. Zithrax Horn Helper. Now you can get that blood-red shine without having to slay your enemies first. Zithrax Carapace Wax. Keep that exoskeleton smooth and shiny, not sticky like those other waxes. And Zithrax Tentacle Tonic, made without silicone like those other tentacle rinses, so you can keep your scales shiny without fouling the grip of your suckers. We now return you to this week's Space Mystery.
We arrived at their apartment. Before we could enter, something seemed off. The door was wide open and voices could be heard arguing inside.
You know the rules. When a captain says pay up, you pay. One way or another. You want your boyfriend back, that means you owe. The captain was generous enough to give you 2 weeks to get the cash together, and I ain't going back empty-handed.
I instinctively stopped Janet from rushing in, already having pulled a blaster from her jacket. I motioned for her to be quiet as I peeked into the apartment. There were 2 Xenos inside. The one with the threatening posture thankfully had his back to me. His figure was large, gray skin. I couldn't see any marks or signs affiliating him with any gangs or pirate crews, at least not from this angle. He was intimidating another Xeno. Had I not known better, I'd probably call them a vague, humanoid cluster of stars and galaxies, as if someone had cut a person-shaped hole in the universe to the space behind reality. I could only assume this was the you we were looking for. The brute was distracted, trashing the place as I approached, but the others saw me and their guest noticed, turning to find me. He didn't hesitate to swing at me, and I only barely ducked out of the way, rushing forward to drive a fist into his gut, hoping it was the same kind of soft spot as it was in humans. To my disappointment, it was like punching a solid wall. The pain in my knuckles was easy to ignore when he brought his fist down on my head. The blow would have knocked out a lesser man, but I wish it had as I fell to the ground.
Freeze, dirtbag!
I couldn't help but recall the old Hollow films she'd gotten that line from. Always were her favorites. Janet kept her blaster held at the guy's head. She still handled that thing like a pro. Probably still went to the range, but now wasn't a good time to be distracted by my nostalgia as I pulled myself up. My head throbbed harder than any hangover I'd ever had. The guy didn't seem terribly intimidated by the weapon pointed at his head, only lazily holding his hand up. He'd been in this position before. Thankfully, I didn't see any sign of a weapon on him, hidden or otherwise. Size and strength like his, the brute probably didn't need it.
What are you doing here?
Private business. None of yours.
Seeing as how you're harassing my witness, I actually would call this my business.
Well, it's a good thing you turned up. Captain wants to see you too.
He suddenly rushed us, but Janet was a quick shot, blasting him right between the eyes. I could tell her blaster was set to stun, but it still took a few shots to take the brute down.
Thank you, Janet.
You have some explaining to do.
I know, and I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner, but the truth is, I'm in debt. By a lot. Gambling. I went through a lot of loans. Eventually, no one would take me but them. I know I shouldn't have, but a few weeks ago, when I was out with Dick, they jumped us.
Do you know what crew they belong to?
The Dark Runners.
Flark! Of course it's them.
How come you've never said anything to us?
They told me if I ever told anyone, there would be consequences.
And this is where the investigation took a nosedive. I had heard of the Dark Runners before. Most anyone who had anything to do with law enforcement had. They were infamous across the galaxy, known for their ruthless captain known only as Zanzis, a man whose favorite restaurant was a place called Violence that only accepted the currency of blood and lost souls. I think I've heard this story before. Sounds like they wanted you to pay up, and when you couldn't, they grabbed him as collateral. No doubt someone would pay top dollar for Dick's hide, alive or dead, considering his history. Enough to cover your debts and then some.
So what do? We inform the justice enforcers, right?
You think they haven't been paid off? They'd have been stopped at the spaceport the instant they docked with the station, if not.
No wonder nobody wanted to take your case. But we can't fight an entire pirate crew. Not on our own. It's suicide.
I know I paid you for this, but I can't force you to throw your life away.
You can't be serious. They'll kill you. Or worse.
Well, what do you suggest? I'm not gonna just pack it in and call it a day. You can't seriously be suggesting I leave my husband behind in the hands of these monsters.
We don't even know if they're still on the station.
They're still here. They're waiting for me to pay their ransom. If not, then they'll auction him to the highest bidder.
So we'll go down there and try and figure something out. Negotiate or something.
Janet, think about what you're saying.
You and I both know you can't stop me. Besides, it'll be like old times. Remember the gunfights the two of us just barely scraped out of?
You talk as if you've done this before.
Dick and I used to be partners before we were married. We had a lot of adventures.
Yeah. Probably a bad time to tell you this, but I don't exactly have my blaster anymore.
What do you mean you don't have your blaster?
I lost it.
You lost it?
Yes.
How? How do you lose a jet black Magnum Power Blaster? A literal one-of-a-kind weapon and probably the most powerful handheld weapon in the galaxy.
You haven't seen my apartment. It's a mess.
You're lying. 10 years of detective work. You're not going to fool me, Dick Rogers. You were always a terrible liar.
Fine. Fine. You want to know the truth? I sold it.
Sold it?
Yeah, look, I
Sold it?
I
can't believe you. You would sell your blaster. The one given to you by the president of space, my father, for saving the galaxy? The one that was engraved and personalized and everything? Sold for scratch. For booze money?
What? It's not like anyone can actually use it. It's DNA coded to me.
You think that can't be reprogrammed?
I'd like to see them try.
Either way, there is absolutely no way I'm letting you walk into a literal crew of pirates unarmed.
Well, I've still got old Ben and Jerry.
I still can't believe you named your fists that. And that's besides the point. I'm coming with you and you can't stop me.
We can argue about it in the space car. As for our unconscious friend here, you call the justice enforcers. Tell them what happened. They'll come take him away. He'll get out in a few hours, but he'll also be out of our hair.
You should get out of town for a while. You still have family in the XR-27 star system?
Yes, I can do that.
We saw you off with some more banter. We got into the space car and made our way to the location where the Dark Runners were docked. We were silent as we drove, parking the space car a distance away so as not to be spotted. There was a long, cold silence between us. I could tell Janet was nervous, as she should be, but this wasn't her first rodeo, nor mine. But even I could feel my hands shaking a little bit. Was I concerned for my own life and the life of someone I still loved in the face of these daunting odds? Or was it just the alcohol withdrawal starting to kick in? Maybe a bit of both. Eventually I found the courage within me, or at least what was left with the lack of liquid variety on hand. I opened the door of the car and Janet was quick to follow. From within her jacket she pulled a bright red blaster pistol. Maybe don't open with that.
You have a better plan?
Diplomacy?
They already have my husband. As far as I'm concerned, diplomacy has failed.
We're heavily outmanned and outgunned. Getting into a fight here is not going to end well. If you're going to insist on the gun, at least stay back and let me go first. They'll think I'm alone. We'll at least have the element of surprise if things go south. She hesitated, but nodded before I took the lead. The docking bay was filled with humans, arts, and Xenos, all loading up cargo into their ship, which was docked with the station. It looked like there was a lot left, lots of cover. It didn't take long for me to spot someone supervising, thin and androgynous. They carried a pair of blades at their hip. I proceeded with caution, but did my best to look confident as I stepped into the clear. I take it you're in charge here?
In the absence of my captain, yes. And for a moment, I thought our prisoner had escaped. But I see you're the lesser of the two. What do you want, spaceman?
Spaceman was my space father. I'm a space detective. I've actually been asked to retrieve that prisoner of yours, and I was hoping we could negotiate something in exchange for his release. I'd really rather not get ugly, so can we talk?
No. Kill him!
In an instant, I found more blasters than I could count pointed at me. Instinct took over and I ducked for cover as the air came alive with laser fire. Bolts started flying. I could hear Janet taking shots of her own, followed by surprised shouts as they tried to find my backup. She was smart to keep moving, giving the impression that there might be more than one. I knew better than to stay put as I could already hear them closing on my position. I rolled behind a large cargo crate. I caught one of the pirates attempting a flank and met him with a swift strike across the jaw. He went down, dropping his weapon. My foot met his head before he could retrieve it. But there was no time to claim it for myself as a stray shot just barely missed me. I decided to throw caution to the wind and rushed my attacker. They were caught off guard as I grabbed them and held them as a human shield. It didn't seem to stop them as multiple shots hit my captive. Should have known better from pirates. I tossed the corpse at a small group and tried to go for their boss. If there was anyone they wouldn't shoot, it'd be them. They, however, seemed ready for me, easily sidestepping my attack. The scoundrel grabbed one of their blades and drew it, striking me hard in the stomach with the butt end. I stumbled and fell, and before I could look up, I could already feel the soft sting of metal on my neck. I recognized the soft vibration of the blade. It meant that thing could separate my head from my shoulders at the molecular level.
Will one of you idiots please end this before I do it myself?
I prayed that Janet would shoot them while they're distracted, but the shot doesn't come. Maybe she's afraid they'd off me the instant she does, but there was no time to worry about that as I felt the cold steel prickle the back of my skull. There was a long, painful silence as I waited for something, anything to happen before I finally heard a blaster fire. But not the one I was waiting for. Whatever it was bigger, louder. I looked up to see the second in command stepping back from me, their gaze behind me as I turned to see the dread pirate captain, Zanzis. In his hand was a familiar sight, a jet-black Magnum power blaster, the barrel of which was pointed at Janet's head.
Dick Rogers. Finally you and I get to meet. Name's Zanzis, but I think you already know that. I'm a big fan.
He tosses Janet down next to me, keeping the barrel of his gun, my gun, pointed at us.
Where's my husband, you son of a...
Careful now. This is a public broadcast after all, and I'm sure the sponsors want to keep us on the air.
What are you getting at?
You can't tell me you don't get it. This is bigger than just you and your double, though it is incredibly useful and profitable. But it's the one thing that no one's been able to take from you yet.
What?
Your show. See, as it turns out, you, me, and everyone here is just players in some cheap entertainment product. For some reason, whatever happens here, centered around you for reasons I'll never understand, gets told as stories out there. You are the most well-known man across the galaxy, in here and out there. And you have done nothing with it. And that's when I had an idea. Get you and any of the relevant cast out of the way and make it my show. And from there, it's merchandising, t-shirts, lunchboxes, crappy little decoder rings, anything I can slap my name onto. And they'll eat it up because I've found my way in. A way to rig the game in my favor.
That's madness!
You'll never get away with this.
You always say that, you know. But the thing is, guys like me don't usually explain their big plans until they know they've already won. Load them up into the ship. We take off in 5. And as for you, it's about time we wrap this up. Don't worry, I've taken the liberty of fixing the script.
You heard it here, folks. Dick Rogers is no more. And prepare yourselves, dear audience, for the coming of our new hero. So join us next time, same space time, same space channel, for the premiere of Captain Zanzis, Space Pirate. Next week's episode, Double Dick No More. But before we go, here's a last word from our sponsor. Your ship can go a light year in under 2 minutes, so why take that long to shave? That's why the fine folks at Zithrax have partnered with Sumaboshi Heavy Industries to bring you the Turbo Razor. No matter if you're trimming hair, chitin, or horns, the Turbo Razor handles it all. We've never heard a complaint from a single customer. Please read all instructions carefully and only use the setting appropriate for your species. Keep the Turbo Razor away from throats, thoraxes, mouths, mandibles, and any other unprotected body parts.
See? What did I say?
I'll be honest. Once I got over the P word, I was enjoying the episode, and I don't really remember what you said.
That this episode was bonkers off the wall to the moon and back?
No, I'm pretty sure I was more reserved than that.
Well, whatever you said, you were definitely right about that script being very special.
Not gonna lie, this episode and the one we're doing next month are probably my favorite thing that has ever been discovered.
As you mentioned, the twist in this script does lead to a part 2, and in this case, we've actually got the script!
Oh, I think my favorite discovery is that the Moai statues on Easter Island actually have full bodies buried underneath the ground.
What?
In actuality, there should be at least 3 scripts in the story arc, but we haven't been able to find out if the 3rd script was ever written, much less broadcast.
Ooh, or that tardigrades can survive in a full vacuum.
But rest assured, we'll be back next month with the continuation of the story.
Oh my god, you guys, I think you just gave me mental whiplash.
Sorry, I just get excited about things sometimes.
No. Mike, live your truth. Share your weird. I just wasn't prepared for a derail from you. It's kind of my thing.
Oh, and speaking of share your weird...
Believe it or not, many people out there have never listened to the Dick Rogers Space Detective podcast. These unfortunate people look just like you and I. They may even believe that they're a fully realized and satisfied human being, not even aware of the wonders they are missing. These poor fools could be your brother, your best friend, or even the cab driver who's currently driving you home from the airport. But luckily, there's a very easy way to help them out and make their life complete. Just tell everyone about the podcast!
And follow us on social media.
Hit them with the handles, Skeevy Mike.
One of these days. We're on Facebook at Dick Rogers Pod, on Instagram at Dick Rogers Space Detective, and Twitter at Rogers Space. And you can join the nerds on Patreon at patreon.com/space_detective.
And make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, which will make it much easier to join us for your next Dick appointment. Same space time, same space place.
Joanna, just say it once. It'll help.
Pornstar! You know what? I do feel better.
See?
I always do.
This episode's nerds are Wendy Wilward as Joanna, Secretary, and Veg, Angela Ventress as Eleanor and Janet Rogers, Michael Storm as Mike Nutley, Jessica DeMaria as Dick Rogers, Emily Anderson as Announcer, ED, and U, and Logan Wright as Pirate Thug and Zanzas. Dick Rogers and the Pornstars Guide to the Galaxy was written by Logan Wright, sound design by Michael Storm, music by Nicholas Johnson, audio editing by Nicholas Johnson.